So here we've got a diagram of the large intestine, which has been removed from the abdomen. We're looking at it in isolation. Again, we can pick up the ileocecal junction, and then we can see food, the indigestible parts of the food, is going to be running in this direction. We can see now the various parts really clearly. Inferior to the ileocecal junction, we find we've got the cecum. Attached to the cecum, we find this blind-ended pouch, which is the appendix. And then above the ileocecal junction, we find the ascending colon. Remember, this is heading up towards the liver, so we have the right colic flexure, also known as the hepatic flexure, which we can see here. So the liver would be positioned around about in this direction. So there would be where the liver is. So we have the hepatic flexure. Then running transversely from right to left, we have the transverse colon heading towards the spleen. So here we have the spleen, and so that would be the splenic flexure. And that's where the transverse colon now runs down this left side. It descends down this left side of the abdomen as the descending colon. Descending colon continues with the sigmoid colon. So descending colon, we've got the sigmoid colon, which is continuous with the rectum. The sigmoid colon travels towards the midline. So starting in this left inguinal region, the sigmoid colon migrates via its sigmoid mesocolon, its mesentery. It passes to the midline, where it's then continuous with the rectum. On here, on this diagram, you can see there's a whole series of external features, and that's what we can explore in the next slide. This is just a small section of large intestine, specifically the colon, really, that we've removed, and we've opened up a window when we've reflected these flaps. Now, what we can see on the large intestine are features that make it distinguishable from the small intestine. Now, you should be able to notice the small intestine by its location, but sometimes throughout life, various things can happen and the position of the organs in the abdomen can become distorted. But here we can see there's a series of distinguishable features that make the large intestine stand out from the small intestine. We have what are known as tena coli. These tena coli here are bands of longitudinal muscle. When we looked at the small intestine, we saw that the longitudinal muscle that went in the same direction as the small intestine was a complete band that went all the way around, a bit like my sleeve, completely covering the small intestine, running in this longitudinal direction. But for the large intestine, you only have 3 bands. It's an incomplete sleeve. You just have 3 bands that are going alongside the large intestine. And these are called tena coli. Now, because these contract, they create these pouches or haustra. And as these muscles contract, they help to shuffle the indigestible, the feces along the large intestine. And the constriction of these tena coli, these 3 bands of longitudinal muscle, create these pouches, which we know as haustra. We have 3 tena coli, 3 different types of tena coli, which we'll explore in the next slide. And here we can see we also have some mental appendices, or appendices epiplicae. And these are just fatty tags that are attached to the colon. You don't find them in the small intestine. They're just attached to the large intestine. These peritoneal sacs that are filled with fats. These are mental appendices. If we open up the large intestine, we can see that where we have these kind of pouches, the constrictions of these pouches on the inside leads us to what are known as semilunar folds. And that gives us the appearance internally of these ridges, where the tena coli longitudinal bands of muscle have in fact shortened the large intestine somewhat. We can see, if we return to the tena coli, that we have 3 types of tena coli. We have the tena coli, which is known as the omental tena, and this is the part that attaches to the greater omentum. So the greater omentum hanging down from the transverse colon will actually be attached to the omental tena. The mesocolic tena is where the transverse mesocolon attaches to. So the transverse mesocolon is coming up from the posterior abdominal wall in line with the pancreas, and it passes up towards the transverse colon, and it attaches to the transverse colon where this tena is, where this mesocolic tena is located, this specific band of longitudinal muscle. The greater omentum extends from the omental tena coli band, and then the final one is this free tena coli, which doesn't have any amenta or mesocolon attached to it. And here we can see we've got some details of what I just explained. We've got the three different bands of tena coli, the mesocolic, the omental, the free. We've got these longitudinal bands of muscles creating these haustra, these saculations, and internally creating these semilunar folds. And also I mentioned these small fatty tags, these omental appendices. Another clear way to distinguish the large intestine from the small intestine is its greater diameter. The greater diameter compared to that of the small intestine. So, apart from the obvious position of the small intestine, you should be able to work out where the large intestine is, and due to its inverted U shape around the lateral aspects of the abdomen, but also via these three clear, distinguishable features.